Poetic peeps and gentle persons, in-betweeners and non-conformers, genders all and genders equal, welcome to a very special episode of Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast. We are done with season 8, but it's June and it's Pride all over the world, so we have 2 special Pride episodes coming for you this week, celebrating the astonishing poets who identify as part of the LGBTQAI community. And today we have an extra special episode because we are welcoming the wonderful Arachne Press to the podcast to do a total takeover. They have just brought out a glorious new anthology called Joy Us, Poems of Queer Joy, and they're having launches over on the other side of the pond. So today on the podcast, we have some of the recordings from those live launches, and also we have recordings from some of the poets who couldn't make it to the live launch. Kicking us off, we have the rather brilliant Cherry Potts, who is the director of Arachne Press, alongside a favourite to the podcast who was her editorial sidekick on this issue, the splendiferous Jeremy Dixon. And together they're going to introduce this episode and also give us a little background to how the anthology came together. So all that's left for me to do is to sit back, just like you, on platforms like Spotify, Apple, Google, Breaker, Podbean, Player FM, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Podcast Addicts, iTunes, Amazon Prime Music or YouTube, and enjoy the show instead of actually having to take part in it. And with that, I'd like to say a huge congratulations to all the poets on the show today, and a huge congratulations and thank you to Arachne Press for making it possible to have platforms like this and to bring out anthologies where we as queer poets get to share and contribute. My name is Damien B Donnelly, this is Eat the Storms. I'm sure you have a cocktail, some cannoli or just a packet of crisps at hand to ensure that you all enjoy the show.
Hello, I'm Cherry Potts and I run Arachne Press, and I'm here with my co-editor
Jeremy Dixon, whom I'm a poet and co-editor of Joy Us, Poems of Queer Joy, which has just been published by the wonderful Arachne Press.
We're absolutely honoured that Damien invited us to do a showcase and take up the whole of the show.
With poems from Joy Us, Poems of Queer Joy.
So this anthology came about from, I don't know really, partly off the back of Jeremy's most recent collection, A Voice Coming From Then, which was hugely successful and very exciting, but rooted in trauma. And I get sent a lot of traumatic LGBTQ plus work. And it's quite hard to read, and I needed a break from it. So I said to Jeremy, why don't we do an anthology, and why don't we make it happy in some way, in a not very optimistic way, I have to say.
Yeah, we kind of thought it was a way of bringing a different kind of anthology of LGBTQ plus writing into the world, one that focused on the aspects of joy in whatever form that presents itself in our lives. And we also knew that we wanted it to be written by LGBTQ plus poets, for LGBTQ plus poets and readers. So appealing to the wide audience wasn't as important in this case as appealing to all our queer writers and poets, and we also wanted it to be an open invitation to everybody who identified as queer and LGBTQ plus to send in their poems.
And we started off with an open meeting as part of our 10th anniversary online festival back last January before last?
Yeah,
January.
Yeah,
Anyway,
2022.
Yeah, over a year ago. And we had about a dozen poets turn up, and we talked about joy, and we talked about being queer, and we talked about poetry and where that intersection came, and discovered that many people found that actually quite difficult. So we decided we'd have a long call period, submission period. And during that time, Jeremy ran something like 8 workshops, both online and in person around the country, to give people a chance to get their heads around the idea, really.
Yeah, and to give them a good period of time to mull over the ideas and then create the poem, because sometimes, we know poems take a long time to actually come into the world, and it was quite apparent that queer joy, although we hear that phrase many, many times in different contexts, when you actually try and quantify that and produce poetry on the theme, it's something that queer poets aren't particularly used to doing, and we really wanted to give people that opportunity to use a different kind of part of their creativity. And so through the whole process of having the workshops and the long submission period, I think it really helped in people being able to write to the response, and gathering by the number of submissions that came towards the end of the deadline, that was kind of borne out, wasn't it?
Although I have to say, always you get about a third of your submissions come in the last week, and about a fifth on the final day, but it was even more than that. We had some absolutely amazing poems that we couldn't use because they were not joyous. People don't read the brief, and we were in the very happy position of being able to choose from quite a long shortlist, which took us an entire weekend of piling things up on my dining room table and then saying, okay, this theme or that theme, and which is the best of this type of poem, and that sort of thing. And we've ended up with, I've forgotten how many, 40 odd.
Yeah, around about 40 poems.
Around about 40 poems. Some poets have got more than one poem in. And we crowdfunded this book because we couldn't get funding from anywhere else. And there's nothing like a really niche audience for successful crowdfunding. So we managed to raise enough money to print the book for the initial print run, and to pay Jeremy for doing the workshops and being an editor and that sort of thing, and a bit of marketing. And then we applied to the Arts Council for funding to tour, which we are slap in the middle of. Having huge fun.
Yeah, in fact, we're recording this the morning after a really wonderful event at the National Poetry Library in the South Bank Centre in London, where we had an amazing night with lots of poets from the anthology, a really wonderful audience, and in a wonderful space. And we kind of created what we wanted the book to do, a joyous space for queer people, and that's as much as editors could hope for, really. It was wonderful, and we're looking forward to going to other places, and also to having online experiences and events like this for people who can't get to the physical events, because that's just as important to us as those, and trying to include as many of the poets in as many ways and as many different types of reading as possible is intrinsic to the book as well, so that people are enjoying it and knowing what it's like to have a joyous event of poetry, of queer poetry.
Yeah, something Jeremy says at each of these events is that most poetry readings, you get to the end of the poem and the audience go, and at ours they laugh and they cheer and they go, yes!
And they recognise.
And it's not that nod of affirmation, it's a shout. And that's what we wanted for this book. We want it to be a shout of joy, really. Yeah. And so what we've got for you for this podcast is a mixture of live recordings, which I'm going to have a fillet through when we finish doing this recording, because I've got a number now of poets reading their own and other people's poems from the book, and some self-recorded bits from some of our poets who cannot get to events, either because they live somewhere that's just difficult to get from, or because they have a disability or other reason that live events just aren't for them. And we have done an online launch, and we're planning to do another online event in October to coincide with National Coming Out Day, because we thought that was a good point to do it at.
And it'll be a kind of summation and recognition of the whole process, really. So we're looking forward to doing that. We really hope you enjoy this episode of Eat the Storms. Hope you enjoy the variety, the differences, the connections between the poets. Another aspect that I found really joyful is poets from the anthology reading poems by other poets in the anthology, and that's quite unusual. So we want to thank all our poets who've contributed to doing that, to read their work, reading other people's work. It's been very joyous.
Yeah, and one of the things that has really come out of this anthology, perhaps more than any other anthology we've done, is how collegiate everybody is. We're developing a community, and it's just lovely. If you go on our website, you can see or our socials, you can see pictures of us all standing around with silly grins on our faces because we're enjoying ourselves so much.
Yeah. And as part of that, the live readings, reading poems from the poets that can't be there, it feels that we're including as many people as possible. I wanted the book to be a joyous community within its pages, and we're actually feel like that's rippling out into the real world as well, and creating a different kind of community of queer writers, which is unbelievable and a wonderful, wonderful, unexpected result.
And if you want to see those pictures or follow us or buy a book, the website is arachnepress.com, and it takes you straight through to the shop on the front page. And all our socials are Arachne Press, all one word, regardless of where it is.
So thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy it. And thanks again to Damien.
Absolutely. Thank you. Right, so the way it's going to work is we've got 10 poets here, and they are each going to read their own poem. Where they've got two poems in the book, they're going to read both of their poems. Where they have only one, they're going to read someone else's. I do not entirely know who's reading what, because some people didn't answer the email. So I think I've got it in the right order. The intention was that we read in the order that the poems appear in the book, but it may not have ended up like that. So first up we have Dean Atter, and Dean is an award-winning Black British author and poet of Greek, Cypriot and Jamaican heritage. His work has won the Stonewall Book Award and been shortlisted for numerous further prestigious awards. His poetry explores acceptance, queer joy, and the power of unapologetically being yourself and fully embracing who you are. And he has a new book out very soon. Yes. Don't you? Yes. You can tell them about it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jeremy and Cherry. It's a real pleasure to be here. I love the Poetry Library. I love Arachne Press. This is the second anthology I've been in with them, and it's a real joy to work with you. When the call out happened for this anthology, I just felt really, compelled to dig deep and find some poems that would kind of like sit well with other poems of queer joy. And one had just been written in a workshop that I went to by Joelle Taylor. And she wanted us to look at praise or jubilation about things that we think should be celebrated. And so she suggested some starting kind of lines such as like big up or praise be or blessed be, and then to list the things that we want to like praise. So this is called Blessed Be. Blessed be black queers in African prints and rainbow trim. Blessed be Sunday mornings at church with the shimmer of Saturday night in the corners of our eyes. Blessed be boxed braids on boys and buzz cuts on girls. Blessed be afros and dreadlocks for all who want them, with no white hands reaching out to touch them. Blessed be gender-affirming and non-conforming hairstyles and clothing. Blessed be our culture on our bodies, our hairstyles on our heads, our music on our hips, patois and vernaculars on our lips. Blessed be James Baldwin and Lil Nas X. Blessed be Topher Campbell and Ajamu X. Blessed be Big Frida and Jean-Michel Basquiat. Blessed be drag kings, queens and all in between. Blessed be Stud Life, Moonlight and Noah's Ark. Blessed be black queer art. So, yeah, the next poem I'm going to read, I mentioned someone in that last poem, Ajamu X, and this next poem wouldn't be without Ajamu X. So Ajamu X is a photographer, among many other things. But I was in Dallas, Texas, and I was doing a poetry reading. And after the reading, someone in the audience came up to me and said, "I'm a friend of Ajamu. You're coming with me." And like, I'd never met this person before. And they took me to this black queer club. I just went with them because they said, "I'm a friend of Ajamu." And I had the best night. So this one is thanks to Ajamu X. It's called Hip Hop Line Dancing in Dallas. Outside this club, we may not recognize each other, but after the Beyonce drag act, it's time for the hip hop line dance. This club is so Texan, so black, so queer, I think. Me, a black British man. I've never heard this song before. I've never done this dance before, yet here I am, one of you for 3 to 5 minutes. I'm gently guided back when I step off beat. Hands take me by the waist or shoulders, strangers, yet family, wanting me to stay in this moment. Thank you.
Okay, so next up, JP Seabright. They is a queer disabled writer living in London. They have 4 solo pamphlets published and 3 collaborations. See, I updated it. 4 next month. I can't keep up. Encompassing poetry, prose and experimental work. They've been widely published and anthologised and nominated for a Pushcart Prize, Best of the Net and Forward Prize.
Thank you, Cherry. It's particularly, it's always joyous, isn't it, to be in a community, in a room full of queers. And as a librarian, brackets, lapsed, it's particularly joyous to be performing in front of rainbow-hued stacks. So thank you, Will, for putting that on for us especially. That's great. So I've read this poem, I think, 3 times in the last 2 weeks at events, obviously, not just by Twitter. And I think every time I've made the comment of how ironic it is to be reading this particular poem when I'm in desperate need of a haircut. So I won't mention that again. But luckily, I have an appointment at Barbarette's, Gender Neutral Barbers in Hackney, next week, you'll be pleased to know. But they inspired this particular poem. It's called Short Back and Sides. Glory to the cordless hair trimmer, to the wet shave, cutthroat razor and the duster brush. Praise be the clippers, the scissors and the number 1 all over. All hail the bleach blonde dye, the majestic fade. Colour me glorious, colour me curious, colour me queer. Salutations to the snip, snip buzz of the barber shop, the low murmur of lives shared, weather dismissed, politics discussed. Or is it weather discussed and politics dismissed? Less of where are you going on your holidays, more of where you're going to pull tonight. Endless gratitude for getting the look just right, for the coming adventure to dance and dazzle in the disco lights. Yeah, I know the place. My boyfriend works behind the bar. No social pretense for our pretended family relationships. We can bear it all here in the barber's chair. Joy upon relief and release upon joy of finding someone who understands the holy therapeutic hair wash, the brush down, the placing of your life, your look, your history and identity into another's careful hands.
Aoife Mannix is the author of 4 collections of poetry, 2 pamphlets, 4 libretti and a novel. She has been poet in residence for the Royal Shakespeare Company and BBC Radio 4's Saturday Live. Her latest collection, Reconstruction, is out now.
My name is Aoife Mannix, and I'm delighted that I've got 2 poems in Joyous, and I'm going to read the first of them, which is actually also in my latest collection, which is called Reconstruction, and this poem is called Heading Out. Broken piano keys crashing against the coast, the road whispers west where the selkies lose their skins, and you can taste the salt in the air, the longing for change electrocuting your tongue. You are breathing fire as you tattoo the last of the evening onto a storm cloud. For so long you were crawling across broken glass, petrified of the vowels inside your own name. You kept missing the steps in a dance everyone else could speak fluently. But you were out of tune, screeching, tumbling into crescendos of confusion. But now at last you're learning to swim through these long nights when the moon opens up the lake to lost cities. You are arriving after midnight, bursting with prayers all the way from Atlantis to let them know they no longer have to walk on knives. Not now, not ever. You are the gospel in the wind, the shipping news crackling on a radio in a small town where a boy-girl is slicing their loneliness into thin strips of skin. The blood pauses because your voice smells of the ocean. And this is the other one that I have in the book, which is called After the Parade. What can be said by curling one body into another? The tenderness of a slow song, the hunger for gypsy music that still flows in the blood of wine. Dance with me, darling, on this night full of rainbows, boys in their leather kisses, the defiance of fireworks exploding through the streets. All those police raids tossed over for the queer joy of shaking hips, feather boas, rubies and emeralds, a trick of the light, snatching your breath away.
Next up we have Rick Dove, who will also be reading a poem by Ron McIntyre. And Rick is a queer, disabled and neurodivergent writer and activist from South London, anthologised really widely. Since 2016, Rick has brought his signature blend of lyrical storytelling to stages across the UK and internationally, becoming National Poetry Slam Champion in 2021. Equally at home on the stage or page or a march, Rick has a vision of a fairer world and he wants to take you with him.
This poem was inspired by one of those adventures that Dean mentioned earlier, and a quiet moment in amongst all the chaos. A light indignity of twos on the Marlborough, above the city, great familiarities and something conspiratorial, crushed in the hushed tones between these muffled beats. How oxidation and respiration mean we are all a multitude of tiny fires burning imperceptibly slowly, until ends in the dark, and against it, how people come alive in low light outside, away from the party, searching for something, when the shadows come to dance, in the flickering of hushed breaths flirting with mastery. And suddenly our platonic nature is dancing shapes upon a wall, a projection of reality, and my turn to speak is a memory telling tall tales of a lost summer, and Mikey's grow house going up like an inferno, and up in that smoke how high we got by the light of that fire, how floating embers are we, glowing potentials to be new golden seats, sparks caught upon a breeze, settling to be divine mischief, a comedy of something running wild and free, for our world is a tinderbox tight and heaving, and these tales teach of a heat in the fuzzy edges, rubbing, the warmth in proximity, of accidental intimacy, of a light in dignity, of twos upon a Marlborough and blood.
Hi, I'm Conway. I'm a fat, queer, trans, neurodivergent poet living in South Wales. I often use my writing as a way really to understand my experiences in our social world. My poem in the Joyous anthology is called Does It Fit? It was written to celebrate the everyday things and the ways we care for and are cared about by others. So here is the poem. Does It Fit? By Conway Emmett. Does your gender feel tactile, like the raised pattern on the metal handle of your favourite spoon? Does it calm you like the downstrokes and cross-strokes of your favourite number? Does it thrill you like the beautifully laid out rows and columns of data in a well-designed spreadsheet? Does it harmonise like putting your face in your partner's bowl of strawberries, breathing inward him and them? Does it warm you up like the blanket crocheted for you with fucks all over so you don't have to give any?
So next up we have Alexander Williams. So Alexander is a jazz singer and host of the popular Dial-Up open mic events. In addition to his regular open mics, he stages an LGBT plus History Month open mic every February and a Black History Month open mic every October. He is author of Secular Verses, a collection of humanist poetry featured monthly in Humanistically Speaking magazine, and he has a solo play, is that right? Not in Slough, despite the title, it confused me, in Watford on the 12th of July.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and it is a real pleasure to be here. I absolutely have fallen in love with this space. It's my first time at the National Poetry Library, so thank you for the privilege of being able to share a poem or two from this stage. My name's Alex, and I always start with a quick 3 things about me. The first is that I'm a humanist. Humanism is a non-religious philosophy which looks to science to explain the universe that we live in, to kindness and compassion to make our moral decisions. And I will be marching with LGBT humanists at London Pride on the 29th of this month. If anybody is interested in joining us on that march, do come and see me afterwards and I'll send you all the details. We'd love to welcome you. Second thing, I'm a singer. I love singing jazz, whereas writing is a kind of torturous obsession. Singing for me is sheer joy. And the third thing is I'm a writer. And it is, I think, a joy to me to be involved with Arachne Press. I was first engaged with your wonderful work in providing opportunities for writers like myself with the anthology Where We Find Ourselves, which was showcasing work from people of the global majority and just really inspiring stuff. So thank you so much. My poem is called The Quick Camp Laugh. The quick camp laugh tumbles from the mouth like an involuntary volcanic eruption, a powerful, rolling, physical mass of diaphragmatic production, a joyous and glorious, high-pitched, voluminous, razor-like blast of emotion, inviting affection, respect or defection, love, hate, amazement, devotion. Thank you. And the second poem I'll share is Rab Green's Probably Won't Be a Church Service. Between aisles at the top of the supermarket, near the meat counter, I thought about what I'd leave behind when I die. What would be said at my funeral? My accomplishments, all summed up, sex. And I thought the sucker punch of clarity would hit me in the gut. Sad, panicked, wasteful regret. But no, not at all. Sounds good.
Health warning on this one. It's very explicit. Joshua Jones, he, him, is a queer autistic writer and artist from Llanelli in South Wales. He co-founded WD, a neuroqueer art and literature space in Cardiff. He is a Literature Wales Emerging Writer 2023 and has worked with the British Council to connect Welsh and Vietnamese queer writers. His debut, Local Fires, was published last year.
Hello. I feel like every time we do an event, I mention the Welsh pronunciations, and I'm not going to do that tonight because I feel bad every time. So, I'm from Llanelli. Thank you all coming from Cardiff for tonight. Thank you all for being so welcoming and friendly. My book, Local Fires, came out last year, as you said. It lost the Dylan Thomas Prize 2 weeks ago, and it's a fucking bust of it right there staring at me. And I just feel like I'm being taunted by Dylan Thomas and I try and not make eye contact. It's kind of like having your dad in the room, like, are you pleased with me? This poem is called The Wrestler, and it's about being horny at the National Museum of Wales after the sculpture by Henry Gaudier Bishka. Place your cock against my cock. Ready your battle stance, elbows crooked, palms cupped, deliver to you my body, balls squeezed tight in metal. A conductor of heat, our warmth pressed together until collarbones pop. I am cracked, I am waiting to be cracked further. Just fucking looked at him. Bent apart and hammered, the spaces between your fingers do not fit mine. How can we get a grip? There's so much oil, bronzed skin, sweat. This light looks good on you. Youth in plastic cast, death's spiral tastes like a mouthful of coins. A very public socking, reach for each other again. towel your hands and try. Thanks.
Our next poet is Cherry Potts. Publisher, novelist, editor, all-round amazing person who's given so many opportunities to people. I owe my whole poetry career to Cherry. In your life, you're lucky to find amazing people sometimes, and Cherry's one of them.
I love you too. Right. Okay, so I have 2 poems in the book, which is down to Jeremy. I wasn't going to put any in, and then I teased him. I said I was going to put them in anonymously, and he freaked out and said, no, I don't need to know which ones they are. This one I actually wrote in one of Jeremy's workshops. Having sat through 3 of them, I thought, I better join in, really. And it's called Great Queen Street. If any of you are old enough to remember Great Queen Street, you might. When we did this online, everyone said, oh, I think I was there. Yeah.
Explain what it is.
No, it's in the poem. I meet Greta Garbo in the ladies in that ex-mission hall on Great Queen Street, where the Lesbian Archive used to be, sometime in the late 80s, after a deluged lesbian strength march. Me in trilby, pinstripe suit, she in soft brown velvet, breeches, jerkin, pirate boots. Too wet for the after party or the tube home. Queen Christina, I say, admiring. She less certain. Al Capone? Sylvia Scarlett, I reply, and we take off our clothes and dry them, piece by piece, under the single too hot hand dryer. Yeah, I know what you were thinking. It takes an age, shivering in damp underwear, with Greta Garbo. My trilby is never the same again. And this one is a much, much older poem, and it was actually read at Alex and my first wedding. So it must be at least 15 years old, and it was old then. We've been together a long time. And it's called Dance Free on Hope. Catch this savage symphony, still so strange, these lips waking to thirst say, yes. Remember the fire flood, the moon melt flow, how shadows leave tide marks. Say, yes. Dance free on hope, chemistry may strike. Live with symmetry, keep supple with song. Say, yes. Desiree is an award-winning spoken word artist, writer and facilitator based in London who doesn't answer her emails. Currently artist in residence for poetry collective Empo Word. Desiree explores intersectionality, justice and social commentary, and we will find out which other poems she's written.
I'm so sorry, I do answer my emails, I just forgot my book, so I didn't know. Hi everybody, it is absolutely wonderful to be here, and I'm very honoured to be here, and I promise I will respond to all of my emails in the future, for fear this might happen again. So I'm going to read a poem in the book called Foundation. I've never been very good at writing love poems. I tried once and it started, you don't have to love me, which isn't the beginning of a poem. But I was given a prompt in a workshop and they said, start with a fact. So it starts with a fact. This is called Foundation. The average heartbeat of a woman is 8 beats faster than a man's, and I feel that in the way that she loves me. How her hands cradle my joy like it's a gift, or her eyes find my truth when I've hid it in the bricks in our living room. Once, at the beginning, she loved me too hard, and my roots surged into the fibres of the carpet. She has spent the last 4 years giving them water. Thank you. And the poem Making Queer Friends on Purpose by Tanya Aaron Sheehan. I like this. I just think it's fun. I think it's jovial, and I love a last line. So. We crash through the hedgerow, glittering fans and twisted horns, our tails interlocked. Vegetarians who will 100% do a murder, full of fizz and pitch-bright screams. If a man approaches, we'll run at him, laughing. This isn't for you. This isn't about you. This isn't for you. Sure. Later, he'll tell everyone that he saw some woman in the woods, probably naked, but we'll forget about him. We're not scary, but you should be terrified. Thank you.
So next up we have Elizabeth Gibson, who is also going to read a poem by Zoe Copeland. Elizabeth is a writer, performer and workshop facilitator in Manchester. She has been a recipient of the New North Poetry Prize from the Poetry School and a Developing Your Creative Practice grant from the Arts Council, and has been commissioned by Manchester Poetry Library. I love this list. She has been commissioned, please take note, by Manchester Poetry Library, Manchester Literature Festival, Superbia at Manchester Pride, the Portico Library, Islington Mill, Oldham Coliseum and Yorkshire Dance.
Hi, it's really lovely to be here. Really love the rainbow behind me as well. The first time that I came to this poetry library was when I had just won the New North Poets Prize, and part of the prize was that we came to the T.S. Eliot readings, and during that little trip we visited the poetry library as well. And that was in 2018, I think, so coming back now is just like really special because so much has happened since then. My poem is about just embracing clothing that is designed for any gender. For me, wearing men's jeans was like a really radical thing, it felt at the time, but once I discovered that, it was incredibly empowering. Coming home jeans. These are my coming home jeans. I knew right away, or rather, I knew once I'd taken them off for the first time and never wanted to again. They were smaller. I'm always in between, with the next size too big. The voice of my mother told me to stop being silly and wear the bigger ones, but the coming home jeans knew that I would never leave them. These are jeans made for men, but chosen by people like me. I so long saw them as a blue dragon in the distance that I couldn't ever have. I knew envy when I knew dykes and jeans, straight legs, belts, hooks for thumbs, brass studs that you want to taste, metallic like blood. I feel so fragile when they are away washing or drying. Jeans take so long drying, and their chemical smell floats over everything. I wore them to visit my family, and for the hour on the bus. Maybe I made a statement to the lads calling each other slurs, or maybe they didn't even see me. But I read my book, felt like who I was meant to be, in the top front row seat in my jacket and jeans, through all the fairy lit towns of the north, all the way home. This is a poem by Zoe Copeland, who is someone who I've met through being in this anthology together, and I discovered is quite a similar person to me. We really bonded at previous events we've been to, and went on a little road trip together between two of the events, which was really lovely. Just talked and talked and talked and just had so much to talk about, so that was really nice. And it's a real honour to read their poem. Trees like us. And I know you're still talking as I stare off into the distance. I hear the staccato of your voice. It continues on over the breeze. But I am lost in the distance where a copper beech and a sycamore, the same giant height, has grown as one. Two organisms, one entity. Half and half, one side purple, one side deep green, separate in their union, like us. I know you're still talking, I don't hear your words, but I know what you're saying.
Hi, my name is Jane Aldous, and this is my poem, Old Flip Phone Videos. Before the days of TikTok, I used my first generation flip phone to record snatches of chat between Bev and I on holiday. When I heard about the idea of the Joy Us anthology, I immediately wanted to write a poem based on one of those funny and intimate moments. Remember when videos on our phones were new and I made silly films of us on the beach at Melvick and Sanna, and West Coast breezes gusted through the microphone as if they were hurricanes. And that time I kept the record button on, put the phone between us as we chatted one afternoon in the garden overlooking Little Loch Broom. I know which cubbyhole my phone's in. With all the other dead devices, I could charge it up, watch and listen. There'll come a day when our voices will no longer be heard, retrieved, recalled. But in those small files on an old phone, we exist. The daftness, fondness, two of us, with no wish to be anywhere else and no idea what comes next.
Hello, I'm Kate Foley. Recording in progress. It is progress too. 86 years of it. During which time I've been a nurse, a midwife, a school teacher teaching English, and ultimately a poet. I had my first book published when I was, well, I don't know, but in the late 90s, just before I went to Holland, where I now live with my partner. And this poem is the result of that travel, I guess, looking back. So, fresh. You wouldn't want to do anything unfresh, said Mother Walsingham, as she separated me and my best friend. What did she mean, unfresh? Took me a long time to learn the freshest thing in life is to lie in your woman's arms, learning love.
Hello, I'm Lydia Fullylove, a writer, a poet, a writing workshop facilitator. Both the poems I'm going to read grew from memories I almost didn't know I had till I started writing. Both are charged for me with joy of different kinds. Instead of a Bible. Last week, in Pink's Cafe, I found a copy of The Well of Loneliness on the shelf of books for borrowing. And back, the 80s, and us just beginning, still thinking we were straight women who happened to have fallen in love with another woman, teachers to boot, the climate hostile, Section 28, AIDS and all that. It was our first holiday together. October half-term, and we washed up at Cabos, a half-built villa up the hill in the trees. We caught a bus to Palio Castrizza and instantly fell in love. We climbed the hill to the monastery. We swam in the rocky cove. And when it came to time to catch the bus, I, whom you'd said never made a decision about anything, suggested, let's stay here. We won't go back till the end of the week. All we had was a Visa card, loose change, towels, sweatshirts and a backpack. But so what? By a fluke, the taverna by the beach had a twin room available, overlooking the sea. Here's your key. Between the two narrow beds, ready to be shifted together and unshifted in the morning, was a small cabinet. And when I opened the drawer, expecting perhaps a Bible, there it lay, bent and battered, ready for sand-sifting hours of reading. The Well of Loneliness. The words, not a warning, but a greeting. And the second poem, another holiday with another woman. Onion. Never an onion like the one we scrumped as we came down from the mountain, chilled after a night's wild camp in unwelcoming Catalonia, where bars were shut and mouths closed tight. A white Spanish onion, splitting its papery skin. We squatted on a rock, facing each other. You tore a chunk of bread. I rooted out the knife. Ring-sliced, cool moons, breaking fast, solid comfort in stomachs. We licked our fingers. I wiped the knife on your shirt. In the next field, there were apples.
We're going to have Steph Morris, whose poems have been published in his pamphlet Please Don't Trample Us, We're Trying to Grow, from Fairacre Press, and in Rialto, Ambit, Ink, Sweat and Tears, Under the Radar, Finished Creatures, the Northern various anthologies. and gardens. His visual poetry has been seen in Beer Bow Journal, Street Cake, Mercurius, and on various walls. So, Steph.
Hi. Legacy. Early days, and I found we were sitting out on the street in the sun with a coffee, holding hands, my love in pyjamas still, alongside marigolds in pots. And I found myself introducing him to the fellow next door. On escalators, I stand on the step below, so we can kiss. We can't not. They all look anyway. We cuddled all down the East London line once. At New Cross, as we climbed the steep side street, holding hands, this woman shouted, "You two are lovely." 1 year on, and the fellow next door had a boyfriend too. Still does. And down the street, there's been knock-on love.
My name's Ron McIntyre. I'm a queer disabled poet from Nottingham. I've been slowly coming out as non-binary for the last few years and connecting with other non-binary poets, and this poem expresses some of the joy I feel about that. Them and they, after Bill, and Phil. Shall I address thee now as she or they? I undertake the mental shift required to change what I habitually say and cast away old notions now expired. Take heart in pride, thy countenance divine, as fools with old-style attitudes deride, and find a way for thy true sun to shine, while joy wells up from somewhere deep inside. Let's live our lives as who we really are. Respect is handed on from self to self. Truth and autonomy are guiding stars. Euphoria deepens like a coastal shelf. Next time they ask you to, say them and they, and watch them blossom like a summer's day.
This is about, well, I'll see how many people can work out what the film is. And yes, I'm aware it's a very good stage play as well. I grew up with the film long before I ever got near to seeing the stage play. If I had feather boa, I'd have my feather boa on, but I haven't got it. So I'll have to just play with my pearls. Genders jumbled, raising more than eyebrows. High heels ladder the stockings of section 28. Greeting normality with a pelvic thrust. Deconstruct me, instruct me, bring out my boldness. Rose tint my world with feather rainbows. Kindle my queerness. Oh, Janet, you fucked Frank first. Oh, Brad, why fronts? Just why? O'Brien, I owe you. Thank you.
Finally, we've got Jeremy. Jeremy is a poet and maker of artist books. He has been published several times by Arachne Press, including his first pamphlet in retail and his first full collection, A Voice Coming From Then, which won the Wales Book of the Year English Language Poetry category in 2022. do. Unfortunately, it was in lockdown, so we didn't get all the razzmatazz in. He got this enormous thing sent through the post. It was very disappointing, wasn't it? Jeremy.
To be honest, I quite enjoyed it because it wasn't stressful. I didn't have to go to a awards ceremony and like have the fixed grin. They announced the winners on the BBC Wales art show, the radio programme. So I sat in my car in Splot, listening to the awards outside this house where people kept coming and going. And I'm sure they thought I was a cop. And it didn't help me screaming in the car when it came through. I just thought I'm wearing a T-shirt by Frank Duffy, who is the illustrator that we commissioned for the cover. Amazing work. I also want to say thanks everybody for coming for this physical space. But also we want to acknowledge the people that can't be here, our poets that can't be here, the audience that can't be here for various reasons. So we are going to we've had one online launch, and we're going to have an online kind of summing up at the end of the process, because we want those people to be involved. And that's why it's so amazing to hear all the poets read other poems by poets in the book. And what I loved, it's not like actors reading, it's poets reading another poem by another poet, and it has a very different feel to just hearing it read by somebody else. So yes, after A Voice Comes From Them, which dealt with some like difficult subjects and things that happened in my childhood and the kind of knock-on effect it had on my life, I wanted to write something joyous. And this poem I'm going to read was really like the kernel of the idea for the book, wasn't it, Cherry? We were working on an idea for an anthology, and it had to be LGBTQ plus poets, and we kind of read this poem, and I thought, well, joy, that's quite a good theme. So this is a poem called While Cruising Cardiff Bay. It contains the word shumfing. Does anybody know what the word shumfing means? It's a Polari word. Polari is a historic gay language that was used by men between the 1920s up to about the 1960s, 70s as a way of identifying each other. And it was a code and people wouldn't understand. So schlumpfing means drinking. While cruising Cardiff Bay, I spy Dame, Shirley, Bassie, shumfing pink champagne, and I can't maintain myself. You're fabulous, I scream across the bar. No, you're fabulous, Dame Shirley screams back. I loves you, Shirl, and I loves you too. But don't you ever dare call me Shirl again. Not actually based on a true story, I'm afraid. And then last poem, the second poem I'm going to read is my second poem in the book, and it's the last poem in the book because I wrote it at the end of the editing process. So it's kind of a little prayer. It's a thanks to everybody involved, and this is it. It's called JOY//US. Pink doesn't always suit. Rainbows are scarce. Unicorns rarer. No permissions required to share your joy. So share our joy, our gaiety, Thank you.
Poetic peeps and gentle persons, in-betweeners and non-conformers, genders all and genders equal. We've reached the end of this very special episode of Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast. Today celebrating Joy Us, Poems of Queer Joy, published by the wonderful Arachne Press. For details on everything Arachne, you can head over to www.eatthestorms.com. Click on the podcast section and there you will find a blog post for every episode. This is a Joy Us episode, and there you will find details on how to get your hands on the collection and find out about contributors to that collection. Now, while you're over there, you can also check out on how to submit to the Storms, our journal of poetry, prose and visual arts, which opens for submissions to issue 4 on the 4th of July and will stay open until the 4th of August. While this issue's theme is Dublin, as we're supported by Dublin, UNESCO City of Literature, I'm hoping that we're going to have submissions from all around the world, because what we're looking for is your idea of Dublin, your understanding of it, its cuts, its corners, its chaos, cobbles and O'Connell streets, its colour and its creativity. Now, that's it from us today. We will be back with you again next Friday. That is Friday the 28th of June, to bring you our annual Pride Poetry Party. So please tune in again from 5 p.m. next Friday on platforms like Spotify, Apple, Google, Breaker, Podbean, Player FM, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Podcast Addicts, iTunes, Amazon Prime Music and YouTube. And take a breath. And so that's it from me, your host and producer, Damien B Donnelly. All that's left is to say thank you so much to all the guests on today's show. Thank you to Arachne Press, thank you to Sherry, and thank you to Jeremy. Until we meet again, be loud, be proud, share the pride, and make sure there's room for everyone in your community. And of course, as always, stay bloody poetic.